Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University. So in this video, I want to talk about how important it is to teach yourself programming, even if you've already learned some other way. Okay, and I'm also going to tell you a story about how I was rejected from coding bootcamp and was forced to learn the hard way on my own. So before we get into that, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and click the like button down below. And as always, you can download my courses for free on my website over at dappuniversity.com/free download. So let's talk about why it's so important to teach yourself programming, okay? And I'm going to start off by telling you the story about how I got rejected from coding bootcamp. So I'm a self-taught programmer. I've been doing this for a while, and I learned on my own because I had to, okay? I'm going to talk about that. I didn't go to school for computer science. I actually went to college for music, and you can see my instruments up there on the wall. And I got into technology initially basically just by building basic websites, right? I really had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of tinkering around, making websites, and people would pay me to do it. And they didn't really care that I knew what I was doing or not. As long as the websites worked and looked good, that's all they cared about. And that's how I got into it in the first place. Okay, so I wanted to take that to the next step. I wanted to actually become a real programmer. So I started looking around what my options were. At the time, coding boot camps were first starting to come out. They were just starting to become a thing. And a coding boot camp actually opened up in my area, so I decided to apply to be in one of their first classes, okay? And I was rejected. I didn't even get into coding boot camp, all right? And that's kind of one of life's little ironies that I like to often think about, is the fact that I didn't get into this boot camp. And I'm actually really glad that I didn't get into the program for a lot of reasons. I've talked about my story about my early career as a programmer and, a couple different videos on this channel. You can check those out if you want to. But basically, it forced me to learn on my own. At that point, I had to move forward with technology, and boot camp wasn't an option, and I wasn't going to go back to college. So I had to learn on my own, right? And I'm really glad I did for lots of reasons. And I'm going to talk about some of those. And I'm going to talk about why it's so important for you to become a self-teacher, to teach yourself programming, even if you already know some programming or you learned the basics or are already good, right? So let's talk about that. So if you want to learn programming initially, there's basically three options for you, right? You can go to college, you can get a degree for computer science or like applied programming or something like that. You can go to a coding boot camp, or you can, do what I did, which is like teach yourself, learn from online resources, mentors, books, etc., right? And no matter where you start, whether you go to college, you go to a coding boot camp, teach yourself, everyone eventually ends up on the same path, which is teaching yourself, right? After college, after boot camp, right? And you get into your job, the only way to survive and keep growing as a professional is to teach yourself in some way, right? Because technology is going to outpace you. Your skills aren't going to be relevant forever. It's always changing. Whether you're in blockchain, whether you're in, mobile, web, whatever it is, the technology is always moving. And if you aren't, you're going to get left behind. It's one of those scenarios where if you're not moving ahead, you're falling behind. And at the end of the day, you must really learn how to, learn things yourself, because as a programmer, you want to develop two meta skills, two real foundational skills that lie beneath your actual programming abilities, which is problem solving and knowledge acquisition. And that's where teaching yourself comes into play, is, you're going to have to develop that skill in order to acquire new knowledge, to not let technology outpace you. So how do you get on this path of self-learning if that's not how you started, right? And I'm not saying that everyone has to teach themselves from square one like I did, right? It's not the right path for everybody, I don't think. I'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute. But let's talk about, those sort of three ways to start and how you eventually end up on that path, right? So the first way, like I said, is to go to college. And you can get a computer science degree, or you can get an applied programming degree, or maybe information systems technology. Lots of options, right? But they're all, somewhat related. And I'll kind of talk about the pros and cons of those types of things. So for computer science, this is a really popular option, right? What are the pros, right? Well, you get a really broad base of knowledge. You're going to get a really strong theoretical framework, about a lot of different stuff, right? But some of the cons are that I see a lot of people graduating from college with computer science degrees who aren't quite at the point where they're super productive in professional pipelines as soon as they graduate, right? And some people even take a while before they really are effective in professional environments, right? So, some people are, and they're usually the ones who are learning, up-to-date skills outside the degree programs already. They are programmers. They were programmers before they got to college, maybe even, and they just like it, right? They do it in their free time. So, and other cons are, college is expensive for a lot of people. I mean, if you have to go to college and you want to be a programmer, it's not a bad choice, right? So now let's talk about coding boot camps, right? So some of the pros of coding boot camps is they're faster than college. They're usually really efficient. They're usually relevant. They're very purpose-built to teach you an exact technology that's in demand right now in the marketplace. You can kind of just go into these coding boot camps and, sometimes they have jobs waiting for you on the other side, companies that are willing to hire right outside of a boot camp, right? Maybe to pay back or subsidize some of your costs or whatever, right? And, some of the cons are that, just like college, you're typically relying on other people to give you the answers, right? And it's harder to transition to becoming a self-learner where you're figuring things out for yourself and teaching yourself, because that's, like I said, the way you need to feed yourself and, grow and change in the long run is by doing that, okay? So the third option is to teach yourself from square one like I did, okay? So what are the benefits of this? What are the pros? Well, you get really good at knowledge acquisition, right? That's one of those meta skills that I talked about that programmers need to, acquire. And it's also really cheap if you're able to do it in a similar time frame as like a coding boot camp, right? If you can teach yourself from square one and, within 6 months to a year time be, in a job, right? That's very cheap, especially if you didn't have to quit another job in order to do that, right? You can earn income while you're learning. Another benefit is you learn exactly what you need to know, right? You can identify the exact technology you want to learn, the exact type of job you want to learn, and you just go learn that, right? You learn very efficiently. It's a need to know basis, right? So what are the cons? Well, it's the hard way. Trust me, I can tell you from experience, but it's very rewarding, okay? And you get really good at knowledge acquisition. You're going to be better at that by the time you're in a job as somebody else who went to a coding boot camp, right? You're going to probably pass that person in a lot of ways if you've been teaching yourself from square one, because you're going to pick things up faster. You've gotten better at that skill, okay? And what are some of the other cons? Well, it's not great for you if you really struggle with motivation, right? If you're not a self-motivator, it's probably not the best choice for you unless you really have to, right? And if you do have to, like I did, then, you see an incentive and a reward, and if you got no other options, sometimes you just got to do it. And another con is sometimes it can be harder to develop the theoretical framework that you get from something like computer science if you teach yourself from square one. You typically have to learn this also on your own and build it out, surrounding your specialty that you've built when you're teaching yourself from square one. So whether you went to a coding boot camp or, you went to college for computer science or you taught yourself, right? Eventually everyone has to get on this path of self-learning. So how do you get there? Well, I think the best way to do it is really to take advantage of all the amazing online resources that teach you exactly what you need to know efficiently, right? Google is your friend in this case. You can, basically look for the types of problems that you're trying to solve that way, and you'll find the answers, and it'll sort of lead you to the next answer, the next answer. And if you don't know the right questions to ask, then there are lots of great, online programs that are very purpose-built to teach you exactly what you need to know. An example is like my online blockchain developer bootcamp that launched recently, right? It's, designed to be a learning resource for you to become a blockchain developer. It teaches you blockchain from scratch and takes you all the way through what you need to know to be a professional blockchain developer, right? I talk about, all of my tips and tricks that I use on professional projects inside of there, right? There's lots of other resources out there. I have tons of free resources. And no matter what you want to learn on programming, I think online really is the best way to learn. Books are great too, blogs are great, but I think video is what most people get a lot out of, right? And also, in addition to those online learning resources, if you can find a mentor or someone who's done this before, or just someone who can point you in the right direction, has a lot more experience than you, that's always another force multiplier that can help you on your path of self-learning. Okay. So I hope y'all liked this video. I hope y'all found it helpful. Again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the like button down below. And as always, you can download my courses for free on my website over at dappuniversity.com/free download. All right, until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.